How much time do you spend coding in one day? Can say it's guaranteed to make a living from game dev if you are experienced. Started learning game dev today. Which engine would you pick? Starting my own indie company and currently working on my first game. Do you have any tips on making games by yourself? What inspired you to make games and start a YouTube channel? I recommend following clean code principles strictly and try to write clean code every time. What did you do to earn a living except YouTube? At what age did you make your first game and how much money it made? I gradually stopped playing games after starting to make games. I don't know if this is common or not. Hello and welcome, I'm your Code Monkey. Here's a bunch of interesting questions that people ask me on a live stream. There's timestamps in the video if you want to jump between them. Let's see. Do you want to learn all about Blender? Right now there's an excellent Humble bundle with a whole bunch of courses. It teaches you everything from the basics of Blender, learn all about animation and rigging, then learn about how to make visual effects in Blender, how to handle simulation nodes, geometry nodes, and a bunch more. I've previously gone through one of these courses myself and I really enjoyed it. So if you want to make your own assets, check it out with the link in the description. How much time do you spend coding in one day? That really depends on what I'm doing, because if I'm just working on games, then yeah, most of the time spent on coding. But if I am, like right now, which I am answering questions on my comments courses, making videos, working on updates to my course and so on. So right now, not much of my time is spent coding. Now much of my time is spent on writing videos, editing videos, recording videos, doing kinds of things. So yeah. It really depends on what I'm doing, but yeah, when I'm working on my games, pretty much coding 90% of the time, just because usually for the art, I just use assets, so I don't have to spend any time building those assets. I really just have to spend time importing the assets, then just write a ton of code. So like for the time that I spent making Dinky Gardens, it's like 90% of the time was spent working on code, so yep. Got some assets from the Unity summer sale like Hot Reload, Odin, Final IK, Feel, and so on. Wow, that is nice. Those are all awesome. So yeah, when do you usually go to buy assets? When you need a solution to a problem or art, or when do you save time? I mean, all of those. That is the answer. Like for example, on my first game, Survivor Squad, back then I did not have the skills to be able to write super fast pathfinding. So because of that, I bought the A-Star Pathfinding project. I've made a video review on that one, the perfect pathfinding. So if you want that asset, I highly recommend. It is insanely fast. So this is something that I bought. Technically, I was capable of making pathfinding, but I wasn't capable of making super fast multi-threaded pathfinding. So I use this one to basically build up my skills. But then for Dinky Gardens, I use a ton of assets basically to art. And I've also picked up Feel to save a bunch of time, so I didn't have to do all kinds of things. So the answer is all of those. All of those can be really awesome. So Feel is really awesome. Final IK, I haven't used it, but I think it's really great. Odin is always really great for building tools. And Hot Reload, that is also another one that is super highly rated. I haven't yet tried it, but it does look really nice for helping you iterate faster and faster. But yeah, I'm not sure if I end up making a video. Yeah, I was planning to make a video talking about all the assets that I use in making the game, but I don't think I made it. Yeah, I don't think I did it. I just made the total numbers video. But yeah, I'm not sure if I mentioned, or I think I did. I think I mentioned, yeah, the assets that I use. Okay, so I guess I mentioned it in this video. So yeah, a bunch of the assets that I use, and yeah, a bunch of them are visual things. Then a really nice shader, text animator. This one's also really awesome, also highly recommended. Feel is really awesome for publishing. The asset inventory, that one is really good. That animation pack, which I've had for literally years. UMotion is really awesome for editing animations directly inside of Unity. And yeah, I used a bunch of Cinti packs, a bunch of things. So yeah, definitely used a lot of assets in making the game, and all of them for those reasons. So finding a solution to a problem, art, or just saving time, all of those are excellent reasons to pick up those assets. Yep. How many languages can you speak? I mean, Portuguese, English, and then I guess I can understand a little bit of Spanish. And yeah, I guess that's about it. I guess in theory, I learned French back in high school, but I can't really speak it. If I heard of it, maybe I can understand a few words here and there and so on. Yeah. And I've been trying to learn Japanese for like 2 years, but I still don't know too much. So yeah, that is one that I definitely would love to learn quite a bit more. It should be fun. Also C# Java. Yes, I also speak C#. I speak Java. I guess I speak PHP, a little bit of JavaScript, HTML, although technically not a language. Yeah, and a bunch more things. I've definitely written code in a lot of languages, a bit of Python as well, of course. So yeah, definitely quite a lot of things. Can say it's guaranteed to make a living from game dev if you are experienced. Guaranteed not quite. Let's say like you, without YouTube, including marketing, game design skills, or is luck still a big part of it? When it comes to luck, my most favorite line is, yes, I believe in luck, and I believe the harder I work, the luckier I get. That is roughly the, the general idea. So yes, luck is always a factor no matter what, but if you work on yourself, if you improve your own skills, including marketing, game design, programming, and so on, the more you improve those skills, the more quote unquote lucky you get. I also did a video on that topic quite a long time ago on, is indie game success all about luck? And the answer is, luck is always a factor. So I would say, don't worry about that. Don't worry about a external factor that is external to you. Just focus on what you can do, increase your own skills, and doing so, it will increase your own odds of finding success. And then when it comes to making a living, that really depends on what that means for you. Like if you live like I used to live 10 years ago when I first moved out of my parents' house and I was living on literally $750 a month, on that, it is much easier to make a game that is profitable if that is my cost per month, as opposed to someone working in like San Francisco where they need 10 grand to survive. So yeah, depending on your cost of living, that can make living with indie games a relatively straightforward thing or something nearly impossible. So both of those can be quite important. Yeah, then I made another, yeah, there you go. This video is also really interesting about how I've managed to survive as a game dev for over a decade. This is actually me reading a blog post that I wrote all the way back in 2017, and it is still very, very accurate to what I do nowadays. So yeah, definitely go watch this video, read that blog post, because that was definitely quite interesting, yeah. Started learning game dev today. Which engine would you pick? I expect an answer like it doesn't matter which, just stick with it, but which would you pick? Yep, that is the main answer, is nowadays all engines are really awesome. Unity is awesome, Unreal is awesome, Godot is awesome, even GameMaker is awesome, even something like Love2D is awesome, so there's really no wrong answer nowadays. Every engine, every tool set, all of them are really awesome. So yeah, the best thing is really just that. Just pick one, whatever it is, and just start learning it. But yeah, honestly, I don't know the answer because when I started, Unity was basically the only option. Back then, back in 2012, when I was looking for engines to transition out of Flash, back then Unreal was still paid. Godot, I'm pretty sure, did not exist. And GameMaker seemed a little bit too basic. So back then, Unity was the only one that was free. So that is the only reason why I went with Unity, was because back then it was the only option. But if it was right now, I have no idea which one I would pick because, again, all of them are great. So maybe I would flip a coin and maybe go with Unreal, maybe Unity, maybe Godot. I don't know, it's tricky because it also depends on what language are you used to. Like, if you like C#, then go with Unity. If you like C++, go with Unreal. If you like Godot script, go with Godot. So yeah, I guess maybe nowadays, considering how I had a bit of experience with C# before I ever touched Unity, and considering how ActionScript 3.0 was very similar to C#, I guess just based on that, I would possibly pick Unity just because of that. But at the same time, one thing that I would love to learn at some point in the future is C++. So for that, Unreal would be a great way to learn a language and learn a game engine at the same time. So yeah, but in general, yep, doesn't really matter. Just pick one, whatever it is, and pretty much all of them are going to be awesome. Game was the most challenging to develop? That's an interesting question because I've had like I don't know, in terms of difficulty, probably Survivor Squad Gauntlets. That was one of the hardest ones because back then I wasn't paying too much attention to the quality of my code. So back then I wasn't exactly focused on writing good, clean code. And that game was very complex. So at the end, it was really difficult to implement new features, new mechanics, and so on. But one game that did go well, Battle Royale Tycoon. This one was extremely complex to make, but I did focus on writing good clean code, so thankfully I was able to make this game. Like, this one has so many systems, so many NPCs, so many things interacting, all kinds of systems, all kinds of things. This was extremely difficult to make, but because I focused on writing good clean code, even at the end, it was still actually quite playable. So that was definitely quite nice. On Godot in part by adapting your cooking game. Nice! Good code practices can translate to any engine. Yep, absolutely. I mean, good clean code guidelines, those are always very applicable to any engine. Those are always very universal. I mean, the book that I always highly recommend, most of the examples on that book, Code Complete 2, most of the examples are in Java, but still, it is an excellent book and definitely applicable to myself as a C# programmer. It's applicable to any language. So yeah, great coding practices. Those are applicable regardless of what language you use. Yep. How did you design the difficulty for this game? The answer is with a lot of iteration. Did you do it so you can fail and always come back from a bad game launch? This game is more of a casual game, so it doesn't necessarily have too many punishing things. So I don't think there's necessarily a super harsh game over. I mean, you can obviously have a game over, but the games in general, they all end up turning a profit. So yeah, the game is very much meant to be a nice chill experience. It is not meant to be a hardcore simulator. So it has that, but in case the worst happens, I also implement a nice loading system. So if you get completely lost, you can then borrow a bunch of money and make it quite a bit. So yeah. So yeah, in general for this one, it took quite a lot of time to design the difficulty. It took a lot of iteration, constantly building upon it, constantly modifying all the numbers. So everything for all the games, all the graphs, coming up with this. So how long should a game sell and then drop down to 0? How should the quality impact the sales numbers and so on? All of that was really tricky to do. But yep, then it did. After a while, I'm really happy with the final result. I do think it has a really nice design. At least 4 games in the span of 2 years. That sounds nice. You think it's a good idea to work on my own projects first? Yes, although there's no reason to just work on them first. I would say work them in tandem. So like send out CVs to places that might be hiring, whilst at the same time building your own portfolio of games. And yeah, making 4 games in 2 years, so essentially 6 months games. That is always something that I very much am in favor of. Make more games, smaller games. In doing so, you're going to learn quite a lot more as opposed to spending 2 years on just single games. So yeah, in general, I think this is a really awesome idea. Release 4 games in 2 years, learn a lot, and perhaps at the exact same time, try looking for a job in the industry. So you can essentially do both things at once, don't have to do just one kind of like that. Would you make a sequel for it? Hire an artist to make a 3D sim-like game? You know it would be a success. That's always an interesting question. Should you make sequels for your indie games? That is something that can sometimes work and sometimes not work. So it's always a tricky question. It is not a guaranteed success. But yeah, so basically the main thing is that I have so many ideas that I would love to pursue. So the idea of building a sequel, that is usually not as appealing to me as going for one of the many ideas that I have in my head. So usually I prefer to build something new. And the second thing is that sequels are not necessarily as successful. Indie game sequels are interesting because there are some of them that do find quite a lot of success, but a lot of them that do not. Like for example, in my own case, like the game that I made before this one was actually a sequel, Survivor Squad. So I first made Survivor Squad. So this was my first team game. I made this one all the way back in 2013. And then I made Survivor Squad Gauntlets. And that one was indeed a direct sequel. It was better than every way, but yeah, sadly, only 8 reviews. This one did not sell very well, so yeah. So that was part of it, is I already had an experience of making a direct sequel, and it did not do as well. So the original one, 500 reviews. This one, only 8 reviews, so yeah. Which is a shame, because I really enjoyed making this game. I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun experience to make, and I think the game nowadays is still really nice, so I definitely would like to replay it again, but yeah. Essentially, when it comes to indie game sequels, they can do well or they can do not as well. It's always a very tricky thing, so that's part of it. But the main thing is really just way too many ideas that I would love to pursue. And yeah, I'd rather do those instead of doing a bunch of things. Yeah. Starting my own indie company and currently working on my first game. Do you have any tips on making games by yourself? Look into the topic of self-discipline, which at least for me, that was definitely my biggest issue, was basically forcing myself to work. In the beginning, that was really tricky. In the beginning, I couldn't really work more than like 2 hours straight just because, or 2 hours throughout the entire day. I really couldn't do more than that just because I was not disciplined at all. So that is something that I had to work on quite a lot to improve myself for quite some time. So yeah, I would say when working by yourself with no supervision, that is probably one of the main things that you need to invest time into learning about self-discipline and how to improve yourself. So that would be my main tip, because if you can make yourself work whenever you should work, even though there's nobody on top of you telling you to work, if you can't do that, then everything else becomes much easier. So then in terms of specific tips on how to get started, really, literally just get started. Experience matters for so much. So yeah, just start making games, make a ton of games, and eventually you will gain quite a lot of skills. What inspired you to make games and start a YouTube channel? I mean, I've always enjoyed programming. Like I started programming when I was 10 years old, and I'm pretty sure everyone thinks, okay, if I can write code, then eventually I can make a game, right? So that was a pretty straightforward thing. So I like coding. Okay, why don't I try coding a game? So that's how I started. And what inspired me to start a YouTube channel? That was a group of so many reasons, so many things. So starting the YouTube channel was for so many reasons. Like, for example, one of the reasons was I really am the kind of person who loves working on many things at the same time. Like, I've got a million game ideas that I would love to get through. And one of the things that I disliked about just making games was how I would spend 1 year or more than a year working on just a single game, just one single idea. So the YouTube channel was one way that I could essentially work on multiple ideas at the same time. So I can continue working on my main game, but at the same time, for each video, I can make a tutorial and make an inventory system, make a third-person shooter system, something like that. So the YouTube channel was a way to allow me to experiment with building all kinds of things alongside also making a long-term project. So that was one reason. Then another reason is I simply, as a learning experience for myself, I enjoy learning things. I enjoy teaching things. So I figured, okay, I'm going to try to make a channel teaching what I know, which in turn is going to force me to learn more things, which in turn is going to grow my own skill set, grow my own things. So that is another reason, just an excuse for myself to learn all kinds of things so I can then teach them and so on. So yeah, there were a bunch of reasons why I eventually started the YouTube channel, so many things. And yeah, it was definitely a great decision. I can say that. I can say that with certainty. I definitely do enjoy the fact that I did it. Channel's a lot of overhead. Yep, that is definitely very true. That is, I mean, that's the reason why previously, before I had the channel, I was consistently making basically one game per year. And since I made the channel, I finished Battle Royale Tycoon, and then I made Dinky Gardens last year. So yeah, in the past 5 years, I only made 2 games. So yeah, definitely is quite a lot of overhead doing multiple things at the same time. So yeah, it is quite I mean, it's all about focus. And for me, I'm really enjoying trying to have that kind of balance. So published the game last year. Maybe I'll publish another game next year. Right now I'm focusing on videos, courses, doing all kinds of tutorials and things. So yeah, a lot of a lot of things. Often feel like forgetting everything you know after taking a break. My imposter syndrome skyrockets after a few days of break. That's interesting. Not really. I don't really forget everything I know. But then again, at the same time, I don't normally take breaks. Like, I haven't had like a vacation or even a weekend, like, I don't even know, like 10 years. Yeah, it's been a very long time since I've had any vacations, holidays, weekends. So for the most part, usually for me, a break means a day where I work just like 2 hours. So just answering some comments, writing some videos. So yeah, I haven't really had any long-term breaks. So maybe that's why I haven't suffered from that. But yeah, usually I don't feel like I forget anything. Even when I go from project to project, it is always perfectly normal when you go back into a project or work on a different project. It is perfectly normal to forget where you were when you first left off. But usually for me, at least after a while, I can usually get quite a bit better at, I feel pretty lost, then I go inside that code base, I read a bunch of things, and all of a sudden everything makes quite a bit more sense. So protect your multiplayer games from cheating. The answer is you don't. The answer is you never trust the client. Yeah, I think cloud-based systems work best, but if you don't use one, how do you manage? Or is not a big concern for you? I mean, depends on the game. If it's a co-op game, I would say don't worry. It's not worth your time worrying about it. But yeah, in general, the answer is always the same, which is never trust the client. So that is really the only way to avoid cheating, is make sure that cheating is essentially not even possible. So yeah, that's really about it. Never trust the client, do everything server-side. But even then, of course, even then you can still find cheaters. I mean, games like Call of Duty cannot completely stamp out cheating. So you as an developer, I would say it's a losing battle to try to focus on that. So I would just do the most basic things, assuming you're not making a competitive game. If you are, then yeah, you definitely need to spend quite a bit of time working on those. But yeah, for me in general, my only multiplayer game, Dinky Gardens, is co-op, so I didn't even worry about that at all. If someone wants to cheat on a co-op game, fine, do it, whatever, I don't care. So, but yeah, for competitive ones, that is quite tricky. I gradually stopped playing games after starting to make games. I don't know if this is common or not. In my case, definitely is common. I very rarely find the time to play games nowadays. Like I was saying at the beginning of this live stream, I haven't played this game, my own game, which I really enjoy. I haven't played it since basically it came out, so I haven't played this in 9 years. So yeah, but yeah, that is definitely very common. Like nowadays, I play, I don't know, like 4 or 5 games through an entire year. So yeah, I definitely do wish I had more time to play games. At least I do spend a lot of time watching YouTube videos of a bunch of games. So I do stay up to date with all of the various games that are coming out. But yeah, definitely wish I had a bunch more time to be able to play some more games. Mia, Uber Eats global suggestion for lunch, please. That's a good question. I don't know because I don't normally order food. I normally eat just boring chicken breast and rice. So yeah, I'm not a very good person for giving suggestions for lunch. So Yeah, I really don't know. Actually, I haven't had like fast food in a long time. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it. Like every time that I eat like KFC, I love ordering a massive amount of stuff. But yeah, it doesn't feel very good to eat 4,000 calories and then the next day I'm completely KO. So, so yeah, that's why I normally don't order food. But yeah. Also, I haven't had a pizza in quite a while. So yeah, it would be nice. Which part of your game would you start polishing first? That is a good question, and the answer is it really depends on the game itself, on what are the common things with the game. Like for example, in a game like this, on like a management game, polishing the UI is probably going to be the most important thing, so making that as polished as possible. Like for example, over here, I would add a little bit jumping when mousing over this instead of just moving the window. I would add a bit more jumping onto these buttons, so I would polish that and make sure all the windows are movable and so on. So yeah, if your game is very UI focused, then polishing the UI makes sense. If your game is action focused, then maybe polishing all the attacks, making them feel really impactful, really impressive. I think that is a great thing. So yeah, look at your game, analyze what is the most important thing, what is the thing that your player spends the most amount of time doing, and then really just polish that thing. Yeah. I've been offered a job by a big studio. Not really, because there aren't really, well, I guess nowadays maybe there are some big studios here in Portugal, but back when I was starting, there was nothing. So that is why I was basically forced to become an indie dev, is because back when I started, there really were not any studios at all over here in Portugal. Is that Tim from? Yeah, that is Tim Schafer. Yeah. I totally forgot about all the various references that I did. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that one is meant to be Tim Schafer uh Double Fine. So yeah, nice. So yeah, nope, haven't been offered the job by a big studio because those don't really exist or didn't exist back then. The only thing there was Miniclip, and nowadays, I don't know. I guess nowadays there might be some more studios that exist, but yeah, still not a huge presence over here in Portugal. So that is why the Indian life makes quite a bit more sense. Trying to make my own music for games, but have no budget and have trouble finding free and good samples. Would using royalty-free music or making mid music tank my game if I want to sell it? Nope, not at all. Most people don't pay attention. As long as the music fits the game, it doesn't matter if it's royalty free, it doesn't matter anything like that. That's really the same thing as with assets. Yeah, I made a video on that, on should you use assets? Should you use assets? And the answer is yes, absolutely you should. Assets are really awesome, and music is really a type of asset. People are not going to care about what you use to build your game. People just want fun games to play, so as long as the music fits the game, the music or the sound effects or anything like that, as long as it fits, then yeah, people are going to enjoy the game for what it is. They're not going to negatively impact your game just because it's royalty free or so on. Nobody notices that. Just make a good game. Use whatever skills you have to build the best game you can make, and that's really about it. I recommend following clean code principles strictly and try to write clean code every time, or write just working code and refactor when needed. Nope, I would definitely go with clean code. I mean, obviously don't go insane. Obviously don't write insanely complex dependencies, abstractions, and so on. So as always, use reasonable mindset. But yeah, in general, do try to write clean code. Don't write dirty hacks, because then it just becomes hacks upon hacks. And the more you build the game, the harder it is. And if you don't write good clean code at the same time and you refactor afterwards, technically that can work, but why give yourself more work afterwards? Really just write it correctly from the very beginning, and hopefully that is going to be quite a bit easier. Are you planning on making a new game? Eventually, sure. Although right now, definitely focus more on videos and finishing my dots course and working on a bunch of things. So right now, definitely working on a bunch of those things. But yeah, eventually, my plan was at the end of this year to get back into Total War Liberation. I really want to work on that game. But we're already close to the end of the year. So I think I might actually just work on that next year. But we shall see. There's always quite a lot of things. You think it's a good idea to release a horror game during Halloween because of all the big companies that release horror games, or should I wait a bit? That's a tricky question because, yeah, like you said, plenty of people, plenty of very big publishers already do that strategy. So I don't know. That one seems like a tricky strategy. If anything, I would say maybe release it a little bit earlier because, yeah, a lot of the big players with big marketing budgets, they do release directly on Halloween. So yeah, I guess if I was doing that, I would probably release it like the week before and hopefully have that be, I don't know, it's a week before, so maybe that is close enough for people to be in the Halloween spirit. But yeah, because launching directly on the date might be quite a lot of competition. So yeah, that is a tricky one, yeah. What do you do to earn a living except YouTube? I mean, I've got YouTube, so that includes YouTube ads. Then on some videos, I also have affiliate links. Then I still have my games, which all my games on Steam, they all still continue to sell. Then I've got my courses, and I've got sponsored video here and there. So, yep, definitely got a lot of various different sources. It's thankfully not just YouTube ads because, yeah, those usually don't pay very well. So, yeah, I've definitely learned to diversify quite a little bit, which is nice. Did you get a chance to make web games in the web game era? I mean, yeah, I made a ton of Flash games, so yeah, I definitely did quite a lot. I think the most successful thing I did to help others was a blog post on how to earn $1,900 with a game in web games. Yeah, I did make a bunch of Flash games. That's how I got started. So I mentioned those in my game dev journey video. And yeah, how I started with all kinds of Flash games. And yeah, made quite a lot of them. So Freeway, that was my first game. Power Attack, that was a nice one. So I made a whole bunch of games. They're all still playable actually over here on Congregate, which I think a bunch of them are still playable. So this is my account. You can see. So this was member since 2008. Yeah, this when I started this, and I'm a Flash developer wannabe trying to make decent, fun, lovable games. So yeah, that was me, and these are all the games. And again, the game that I'm playing right now, Game Corp DX, that is the deluxe version of this game, which was one of my most successful Flash games. So yeah, definitely started doing all those. Did a ton of games, so many things. And yeah, I did get a bunch of them that were sponsored and so on. Like my most successful sponsored game was Blob Wars. There you go, this one, which I believe was sold for $2,500. So yeah, it was definitely a nice thing. Very different, yeah. And then sim and strategy games, any plan for action or adventure games in the near future? I mean, one of the games that I really enjoyed, one of my games, was Hyper Knights. I really enjoyed making that game. It was actually very successful and people really enjoyed it, so that was great. I really enjoyed making this one. It is definitely more of an action game, and I definitely would like to experiment with doing something similar to this, so something very actiony, killing lots of enemies and lots of things. So yeah, I did enjoy making this game, and people did enjoy playing it, and it was successful. So yeah, I would love to try out doing some action a little bit more at some point in the future. Once again, it goes back to the same thing, having way too many ideas, way too many things that I would love to do, and yeah, it's always impossible to do them all at once. So yeah, I kind of have to pick one at a time and then essentially go to it. Yeah. What do you think about code-only game engines frameworks? I think they are interesting, but also very difficult. That's like an intermediate between using an engine or building your own engine. So if you want an intermediate between those two, then those can be good. But in general, I really prefer just use an engine that handles a lot of things by yourself so I can focus on just making the game. But if you just want to write some code, then yeah, those as a learning experience, those can be really awesome and help you learn quite a lot. How many unfinished projects until finish first game? 2 or 3 projects? That really depends. I mean, if you pick a tiny scope, you don't necessarily need to end up with unfinished projects. So I would always recommend make smaller and smaller games. And doing so, you can actually finish it. You can gain experience without having to abandon a project. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's a number of unfinished projects you need to make before you can make a first game. So yeah, just make plenty of games, make small games. And as you grow your experience, then you can increase the scope a little bit. So start off making just a 1-week game, then a 2-week game, then a 1-month game, then a 2-month game, 6-month game, and so on. So yep, definitely increase that, so on. What is your age? I'm currently 36. At what age did you make your first game and how much money it made? I mean, my first Flash game I made in 2008. So I guess back then I would have been 20 years old. And that game made, I think, around $5. So yeah, definitely started very much from the bottom. And I do think didn't I make a video on that? On how much money I made at the beginning. Yeah, there you go. I did make a video on that topic. So if you want to see how much I made at the beginning, you can definitely go ahead and watch this, where I started by making tiny Flash games that made no money, then eventually moved on to Steam. Yeah, Mochi Media, that's how I started. Basically, you had Flash games which had ads, and those ads would give you a little bit of money. So for every time someone played your game, you could do something. So yep, this was my first Flash game. It's called Freeway. You just drive around. That was it, super basic. But yep, that is how I started. And yeah, Flash game license, that is where you can sponsor. So yeah, lots of interesting stuff. Definitely watch that video. That was a fun video to work on, to do this. Have you ever tried publishing to Android, iOS? I did try once, like a very long time ago, when I was making the transition from Flash onto Steam. Back then, I wasn't sure, do I go onto Steam or do I make mobile games? Those were the two valid options. So I did experiment making one game into mobile, but didn't really push much into it. I think I got like 10 downloads, something like that. So yeah, mobile is a completely different world. And nowadays, my skill set is very much on Steam, on making Steam PC games, Steam marketing, and all that. So yeah, nowadays I definitely stick with my core competency instead of trying to go for Android and iOS. Those are completely different worlds. So yeah, it's always a tricky thing. Have you ever tried UI Toolkit? Yep, I did for the C# course, the companion project that I built on my C# course. I did use UI Toolkit for building all of these editor windows, and I did really enjoy it. I think for this, it is really awesome. So anytime that I want to make any kind of editor tool, I will be using UI Toolkit. But when it comes to in-game UI, for that, I think I still prefer Unity UI. So yeah, UI Toolkit, really awesome for editor tools, but for real-time UI, yeah, I think I won't stick with that one. But I really enjoyed making this one. It was surprisingly easy to build all of these windows. All of them are really customizable. You can change the size and everything works perfectly. And yeah, can place any kind of that inside of it. So yeah, this was really awesome to do. And yeah, if you're making editor tools, I highly recommend you look into UI Toolkit. Nice. After finishing university, do you think game developing won't be a plus even if I apply for another type of programming? Yeah, of course. I mean, making a game is an extremely difficult task, and anyone who knows that will see, okay, this is definitely someone who is skilled. They managed to build a complete game. So yeah, I would say, obviously it depends on what you're applying for, but game development involves a lot of programming, a lot of skills, involves a lot of managing yourself, doing a lot of tasks, and I'm pretty sure any employer who is worth anything would value those skills quite highly. So yeah, I do think those would be quite nice. All right, so those are a bunch of interesting questions. Thanks for asking them, and I hope you found my answers interesting. All right, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.